Hey there, good afternoon to you. It is 5:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Coming up, I've got some information for you about the Democrats, their big convention, and how they're hoping to avoid their own voters at this convention. Their new devious little plan. It reminds me a lot of 2020. Details ahead. Again, you can join us, 888-630-9625. The Washington Post has a piece this week about Donald Trump, a new scandal they're cooking up. Headline, what Trump promised oil CEOs as he asked them to steer $1 billion to his campaign. Oh, this sounds scandalous. Let's read a little. As Donald Trump sat with some of the country's top oil executives at his Mar-a-Lago club last month, one executive complained about how they continued to face burdensome environmental regulations despite spending $400 million to lobby the Biden administration in just the last year. Holy cow. Trump's response stunned several of the executives in the room overlooking the ocean. You are all wealthy enough, he said, that you should raise $1 billion to return me to the White House. At the dinner, he vowed to immediately reverse dozens of President Biden's environmental rules and policies and stop new ones from being enacted, according to people with knowledge of the meeting, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe a private conversation. Giving $1 billion would be a, quote, deal, Trump said, because of the taxation and regulation they would avoid thanks to him, according to the people. Trump's remarkably blunt and transactional pitch reveals how the former president is targeting the oil industry to finance his re-election bid. What a scandal. Here to discuss and here to admit the scandalous nature of this scandal is Daniel Turner. He's a founder and executive director of Power of the Future. Daniel, good afternoon to you, sir.
Oh, Vince, always a pleasure to be on, and I hope it's 10% for the big guy, just like it is for Biden.
Yeah,
$100 million would come in handy for President Trump.
Yeah, no implication that Don Jr. is going to be taking $100 million out of this pot or anything like that. No, so I read this and I thought to myself, this is hilarious. And if this comes true, it's going to be great for America. In other words, if the oil industry did actually cough up $1 billion for Trump's reelection campaign, and by the way, I'm not even convinced you really need the money to win. I mean, Trump did it before against Hillary Clinton with far less money. I think he's going to do it again this year. But still, if the oil industry did cough up some cash to help Trump, that would be a worthwhile endeavor. And damn, that would be a benefit to the rest of us.
It would, and I do hope they do that. I hope they cough up all the money that they possibly can, because it's not just the oil and gas industry that's on the line, but it's our national sovereignty, it's world peace. But for a little bit of context, you know, when I saw this article pop, and obviously I do this for a living, so I remember the players, but I found so many articles from 2020 when Biden was promising trillions of dollars, and he has spent trillions of dollars for the green agenda. And then you have groups like the League of Conservation Voters, which pledged $100 million to the 2020 campaign. Michael Bloomberg pledged $100 million to the 2020 campaign. And sure enough, we have spent trillions of dollars on this green initiative. You're going to tell me no one got rich off of it? You're going to tell me it didn't benefit anybody? So I will not deny the fact that President Trump is trying to raise money, but Biden did the exact same thing, and there was no outrage.
Well, yeah. Also, there's a long history of politicians taking money from special interests that have nothing to do with American interests. So, for instance, Joe Biden has existed in American politics as a result of the financing and goodwill of the credit card companies, and he's worked throughout his career to enhance their odds and their stake rather than the people who end up getting screwed over by those very same companies. So it's like, what? And so if Trump is asking the oil companies to help him out, he's doing it in synthesis with an expectation for his campaign, which is that he open up drilling and American energy to make it flourishing again here in the United States.
And what happened last time we had flourishing of the oil and gas industry, right? And if we go back and look at it, right, Trump is the big oil shill. He's in the pocket of big oil. When he had the presidency and the executive power and the oil and gas industry was booming, right, we saw more oil produced at a lower price point for a greater number of people. We lowered emissions. If you want to play the emissions game, we lowered emissions more than any other Western European nation after dropping out of the Paris Climate Accords. Right? Oil was averaging $50 a barrel, $52 a barrel, and gas hit for the first time below $2 a gallon.
Yeah.
So when the oil shill was in the White House, America seemed to be doing pretty darn well. It's very bizarre that there's this fear-mongering that if we give President Trump back in power, the oil industry will be in charge. Well, America did really well when oil and gas had a favorable administration, and we can return to those days.
You know, the COVID and then subsequently all of the Biden inflation has been an unfortunate but essential macroeconomic lesson for the rest of us. When companies are hit with massive expenses, they've got to go somewhere to cover those expenses, and that of course is typically the consumers or their own workers. That's usually how it works. Yeah. Here you have Trump saying he wants to cut regulations and fees on American energy production. Again, the Washington Post is framing that as a scandal, but the end result of that would be that it means energy is cheaper for consumers everywhere. Correct?
Exactly, and it means goods are cheaper because everything that you have in your hand, everything in your refrigerator, all the clothes in your closet, everything is either grown or manufactured or harvested. It's all transported, right? How many of us have had an Amazon delivery this week? And all of those fees come from the cost of energy. And so if you make energy cheap, you make life cheap. Part of the reason why inflation is through the roof is, yes, the crazy spending that we've seen the last couple of years, but also when oil is $85, $90 a barrel, right, everything costs a lot more money. The food that you're eating, the every manufactured good. So cheap energy is cheaper life for America. But, you know, you have to go back and remember the Obama administration. Now we're going back in time. But remember how they used to say we need that European-style pricing. There is a mentality that wants higher costs of goods. They want high, expensive utility bills, gas. They think that is good because they consider that that it will sort of cleanse society from superfluous spending, or it will make us a more abstemious people. When we can't afford food, maybe we'll eat better. But boy, what a horrible way to look at humanity, by torturing them, by punishing them with expensive living for your own agenda.
Yeah, and it has life and death consequences too. You know, this. I do wonder, though, why it takes arm twisting from Donald Trump. Let's assume for a moment that the story that the Washington Post is telling is true, insofar as Trump is telling the oil companies, "Hey, please donate to my campaign, help me out here." Why does he have to twist arms to make that happen? It seems to me like an obvious thing. Why would anyone be hesitant to get the American energy back up and running with Trump in office?
Well, that's where I think we have to take the Washington Post article with a grain of salt, because I know folks who have had conversations with the campaign. I know folks who are in this space, and there is no arm twisting, right? You may find some of the majors that have publicly traded companies and shareholders that are reluctant, but in terms of private individuals, in terms of oil and gas companies, and as a reminder, 80% of our oil comes from family-owned private companies, right? 80% of it. The vast majority of our oil does not come from these huge publicly traded companies. They come from hundreds and hundreds of, Vince Coglianese oil companies, and they have 15 wells in western Oklahoma, and that's how the energy industry is so robust.
Yeah, I need an oil well. You're right about that's a good idea. If we get to the point where I can own an oil well, then America's really succeeding. Hey, the other piece
I would drill on my farm if I could. I mean, I got a couple acres out here in Shenandoah. If there was oil underneath, I would try to find it.
It's going to be awesome. I can't wait for that. So here's the other thing, though. You mentioned the publicly traded companies. I do from time to time think that, man, they're really trying to play both sides of the aisle here, the big oil companies, because they've got, they do want to do the drilling, they do want to pull up, do the fracking and get all the natural gas, but at the same time, they do suck up to the left, don't they? This whole effort, like they're constantly doing, we're doing carbon capture now, we're investing in renewables, we're investing in green energy, and it's like, why are you even paying lip service to the extent that you're doing that to something that is not only destroying your business, but really hurting people?
You're bringing me into a conversation that is going to get me in trouble, but I didn't start Power of the Future to stay on the outskirts, but to speak the truth. And part of the ugly truth is that the majors you're absolutely right. They enjoy this space because if they give money to carbon capture, if they give money to Greta Thunberg, no one's throwing bricks through their windows, right? No one's protesting outside their offices. They get left alone, and that's good. And secondly, the people who are getting protested, the people who can't follow the new compliance laws that come from Deb Haaland or Commissioner Regan at the EPA, well, they start having financial problems, and then we buy them, right? And so there is an ugly collusion of big government and big business. And in that sense, big business, big oil is not always our friend. And big oil doesn't like listening to me say that right now, but they know that they are guilty of these crimes because they can put their competition out of business. And, we saw the same in COVID. How many big box shops had lobbyists saying we need to stay open? But again, Vince Coglianese's hardware store had to close up shop because you don't have a lobbyist. And so,
I have a very expansive portfolio. I've diversified. I'm not only in oil, but I'm also in hardware now. But with these big oil companies, though, there is a reality, which is that, even among the people we like, sometimes they run astray. They go astray. And it is totally worthwhile to hit them in the nose with a newspaper when they're headed in the wrong direction, just to see if you can't get a course correction going.
Absolutely. And that's where, my organization and my work, I'm not here to support the oil industry as in terms of profit, or I'm here to support what helps America and what helps American energy workers. And there's a lot of positions that we take that some of the majors are like, that's the wrong position. It's bad for our profits. I'm not here to have you guys make profits. I'm here to produce a product at the lowest price point possible for the flourishing of the American people. And sometimes their interests are not the American interests, but that's where you have to stand up, Vince. Otherwise, what the hell's the point?
I know.
Right? What's the point if Nike's using slave labor, if Disney's using pornography, if Google is spying for China? Then why bother? What are we celebrating here? Corporatism? That's not America.
No, you're totally right about that. And one of the things you're so good at is stopping the demonization of the importance of American energy. It's critical, and it's totally pro-human, which is where we should be. Daniel Turner, thank you as always, man, for assessing all of this and for joining us today. To the phones we go. Hugh in Washington, D.C. Line 1. Hugh, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Hello, good afternoon, Vince. I just want to say with regard to the discussion on the oil industry, I think it would be beneficial to widen the aperture and say we're talking about the hydrocarbons industry. And energy is one thing, but the biggest part of the hydrocarbons industry is the chemical industry, and a key part of the chemical industry is fertilizers. So all these people who want to whack up the price of oil, you're actually condemning the global south to abject poverty. You're doing it two ways. You're stopping them from engaging in intensive farming, therefore releasing people for more productive jobs in industry. And one simple example is a standard John Deere tractor in East African farming replaces 1,000, usually women, who are working from 8 in the morning to around 6 or 7 in the evening. Now, they can devote themselves to more high-value practices. Similarly, you're advancing the whole structure of society. So all these people who ostensibly, quote, care, they live in very nice, comfortable, probably a suburb of D.C. or something like that, and they have no conception at all of what they're actually doing to billions, literally billions of little brown people who are living in poverty. And if they think those people are going to sit back and be told that they have to accept that poverty because somebody's concerned about carbon capture, you've got another thing coming. That's not going to fly.
Yeah, you'll start to get more scenes like we got in Sri Lanka, where people raided the presidential palace. I mean, we've begun to see a lot of this all over the planet, and the globalists, the ruling class, they've got their head in the sand about what's actually going on.
You are absolutely right. Absolutely right. And it will only get worse because from the global south perspective, this sort of diktat is not going to fly anymore. We have already industrialized. We have the benefits of it.
Yes.
They want it too. And for us to say, oh, no, you can't have it because of hydrocarbons, when we all went to school and learned, what do plants require? That would be carbon dioxide.
Exactly. Well, the other piece is that there's
8 billion people without that.
Of course. And then more selfishly, if you want to assess it, also just like everything that makes your life possible is predicated on petroleum-based products for the most part. I mean, it's like everything around us has some sort of chemical derivative of petroleum in it, including I remember a couple years ago, remember the North Face jacket company? They came out and they were saying, we got to end fossil fuels. And people started pointing out, your products are literally petroleum based. All of that clothing is made from that product. What are you talking about?
You are absolutely right. In a former life, I was one of the general counsel for the world's largest chemical distributor. And when you got into that industry, and this is one of the few joys of being a corporate lawyer, if you keep your eyes open, you learn how the economy works.
Yeah.
And when you got into that industry, you realized that once you started shutting down hydrocarbons, our world dies, and the prospect of the future for much of the global south dies with it. So all this stupidity of, oh, yes, let's hammer the oil industry. Well, if you really feel that way, my suggestion is, please, and people are going to be offended by this, just go and abort yourself. Do that first.
Yeah, well, in other words, you're about to lead to immense human suffering for the rest of us.
Exactly.
All
and
right.
you're keeping people locked in that position. Anyway, thanks for your time. Very much appreciated.
Well, thank you. What an excellent phone call. I really appreciate that. Hugh in Washington, D.C. Clearly knows what he's talking about. I'm really grateful for the call. What a great audience we have here. Hey, coming up, I do want to, I've got a lot more to get to. I want to get to the Democrat National Convention coming up in Chicago. They're expecting some chaos there. Well earned, I should say, as the revolution is beginning to consume itself. They have a plan now that they're developing on how to avoid that revolution. Kind of hilarious. Kind of reminds me of 2020, actually. Why do so many of these 2024 news cycles remind me of 2020? Starting to think they're rigging the election. Hold on. I've got more ahead right here on WMAL and the Vince Coglianese Show. Good afternoon. It is now 5:35. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news heading into your weekend. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Nick is in Purcellville on line 2. Nick, you're now on the Vince Coglianese Show. Good afternoon, sir.
Hey, Vince. I have a Mother's Day poem that I think can save some lives.
Oh, well, good. Just in time.
Yeah, well, here it is.
Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. And I wrote this 10 years ago. Thank you, Catherine, for being my mom. As a baby, you fed me and cleaned up my bum. Thank you for your caring love and affection. You took me to church, giving me some direction. Now your life is over, but it keeps on rewarding me. My every breath of thanks for not aborting me.
Well, how about that? What a nice message. What a nice message. And so you wrote that 10 years ago?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My mom's been gone for 30, but I wrote it 10 years ago at Mother's Day. And, I think that's what it's all about. You can't be a mother if you abort your children.
You lose your children if you do. That's a really nice message, and a deep one, actually. Nick, thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Heading into Mother's Day. On this issue of abortion, which is horrible, just awful. RFK this week revealed a bit about who he is as a candidate, RFK Jr. He was doing a podcast, I think. Was it Sage Steele? Is that who he was talking to? I think that was who he was having this conversation with. And she was asking him for some clarification about to what extent he supports human sacrifice. And here is the answer that RFK Jr. gave.
But so in other words, keeping it as is with Roe versus Wade having been overturned and leaving it up to the states to determine if and when a woman can have an abortion?
No, I wouldn't leave it to the states.
You wouldn't, right.
No, I would.
You would say completely, it's up to the woman.
My belief is we should leave it to the woman. We shouldn't have government involved.
Even if it's full term?
Even if it's full term.
Okay.
Did you hear his pause? He knew the gravity of what he was about to say. And he said out loud Joe Biden's position. The two of them share that. Yes, of course a baby should be aborted. A fully grown, prepared to enter the world baby can be killed and should be killed. Up to the woman, he says. That's RFK's position. That is extreme. That is way outside of where the American people are. No matter where they are in this issue, they're not there. They're not in the Ralph Northam school of human sacrifice at all. And yet RFK is. So that's getting some attention online this week. That he declared that. I guess that's only competing with him revealing that apparently a brain worm had consumed some of his brain. And then did he say the worm died after it ate a little bit of his brain? Is that what he said? I think that was the summary of the story. It does leave you wondering what kind of worms are in Joe Biden's head. But if we ever get the answer to that, we'll let you know. The White House never lets the doctor out, so we can't ask him. We can't have him answer any of those questions. And the press wouldn't ask him anyway. So that will remain a mystery forever. Speaking of the White House and the Democrats' plans for it, there is now a report out that the Democrat National Convention that's coming up this year is not that far away. And when we get there in August, it may not be entirely in person. In fact, Politico reports today that the DNC is preparing for the worst in Chicago without the help of the city's mayor, they say. Dateline Chicago, President Joe Biden's top advisors are all too aware of the ghosts of 1968, that they may haunt their convention there, but they're grappling with a pair of more urgent and thoroughly modern-day challenges as summer nears. How far can they go in reprising their virtual 2020 convention to mitigate the threat of disruption inside the arena? And how will they navigate a rookie mayor who unabashedly sympathizes with the protesters? So they got a lot of stuff going on here. Trumpeting the success of their COVID-era convention 4 years ago. Success? I don't know. Would you call it a success? Some in Biden's orbit are aggressively pushing to make the 2024 conclave a hybrid production. That would mean in-person speeches from the president, party luminaries, and rising stars to draw television attention, alongside a mix of pre-recorded testimonials and videos from other parts of the country. The goal? Drive maximum viewership on television and the internet while minimizing live programming and openings for protest in Chicago's United Center. So here's what, in so many words, what they're saying is the Democrats are basically trying to hold their convention on Zoom this year. They really don't want much of this to be in person because they're scared to death that their own voters are going to ruin it. And the Democrats in Chicago have already been training to scream death to America in Farsi. We played audio for you recently of a bunch of Democrat disruptors practicing in Farsi how to say death to Israel and death to America so that they can be ready for the Democrat convention. That's what's actually happening. They say this would all mean moving the party business, such as the rules and platform votes, off the floor and denying would-be demonstrators a chance to seize on contentious debates. While the Biden campaign, White House, and convention planners have only just started hatching plans, senior Democrats tell me, the Politico writer says, that they're discussing whether to conduct such business before the convention even begins or move it out of the arena and across town to McCormick Place, their other Chicago venue. Serendipitously, Biden's advisors may have a very good reason to move up such housekeeping. If the Ohio legislature does not relax its ballot certification deadline, which is before the Democrats' August convention, the DNC may have no choice but to technically nominate the president before the conclave begins. Yeah, this is a feature. Ohio's ballot deadline, so that Biden's name can appear on it, requires that you have an official party nominee. I don't have the date in front of me, but essentially the DNC is not holding their convention until after Ohio's deadline. And so right now, the Democrats may be forced to actually to officially nominate Biden before the convention and then pretend they're doing it at the convention. Isn't that amazing? So once again, this is more theater from the left. It could be a fake convention. That'll be great. So a fake convention conducted over Zoom as lunatic Democrats are trying to work their way onto television cameras and disrupt the whole thing. It couldn't happen to a better party, could it? So they're trying to figure out how they can handle all of this. One of the ways they've been attempting to handle it is, of course, rigging the election. They've been trying to remove people from ballots, remove RFK and specifically Donald Trump from ballots all across the country. They've been trying to do that. They've been also trying to imprison the leading candidate for president of the United States. That's Donald Trump. Trump was subjected to more time in court today as Alvin Bragg's ridiculous case against him continues. He is subjected to a gag order. None of the witnesses and lunatics who are trying to take him down are. The American media is not gagged, so they're spending all their time trying to throw haymakers at Trump. And Trump is gagged by this judge who is a Biden donor, who has Biden staff. They have Biden staff on the prosecution team going after Trump. And Trump's not allowed to mention any of this. Trump stepped outside the court this afternoon. He had a number of things to say, so I want to share them with you. Here's Trump first and foremost talking about how there's a gag order imposed on him, but the judge refuses to impose one on Michael Cohen, the crazy guy.
There is no gag order to Michael Cohen. What the judge did was amazing, actually. It was amazing. Everybody can say whatever they want. They can say whatever they want, but I'm not allowed to say anything about anybody. It's a disgrace, and you see it. The media sees it. And it's really very sad. If you look at the legal experts and the legal scholars, every one of them say this trial is a scam. It's something that should have never happened. By the way, it could have happened 7 years ago. They bring it right during the election. Nobody sees it. Nobody talks about it. This should have been 7 years ago. It shouldn't have been brought. But if it was going to be brought, it should have been brought 7 years ago.
Yeah, the timing, that's so critical. All 90-something charges brought against Trump by all of these various Democrat-run prosecutors and districts, they all came in the last year. How many data points do I need to point you at in order for you to come to the conclusion objectively that this is an election rigging exercise? It's even to the point that CNN's Fareed Zakaria revealed in a piece today that he believes that these prosecutions are all political hit jobs. He's like, I don't even want Trump to be reelected, but these are political hit jobs, he admitted. Trump today also had this to say about Joe Biden lying to CNN about inflation this week.
Biden made a claim that inflation under Trump was 9%. When it wasn't, it was a tiny fraction. It was 1.4% and actually going down. We had essentially almost no inflation. But we had 9% inflation, and that's a fake number because not everything was included with Biden. And if you add it all up.
So, in other words, Trump's saying, like, Biden is the one who drove the numbers up to 9% inflation, which is horrific. And, of course, we've all lived through that. And Trump's saying that the official measure on inflation doesn't even really capture the way people spend money. In other words, like, your cost of living was up much higher than the official government data showed.
And if you add it all up, I think it's a 50% inflation tax. I call it the Biden inflation tax. So he lies, and he lies about everything, including his golf game, because he can't hit a ball. He can't hit a ball 100 yards.
I love the glancing blows. He's always been like that. That's so funny. You know, one thing on taxes, I want to get to this. We'll get to this in more detail soon, probably with EJ Antoni. We'll talk to him about this. But you know that the whole thing of the conversation about how the Trump tax cuts are set to expire next year, the Trump tax cuts. The word tax cuts, it applies to most of us perfectly fine. But in reality, what Trump passed was a tax reform, because not everybody in the end got a tax cut. The people who got tax hikes by virtue of the way the reform was done were rich Democrats, wealthy Democrats who live in Democrat-run states, basically. Wealthy people who live in Democrat-run states. And the reason for that is because when the Trump tax cuts passed, they passed something called, they placed a limit on state and local tax deductions. So if you live in a high tax state, previously you could write off all the taxes you paid to the state on your federal taxes, and it would help bring your tax burden down. It would give you a tax cut as a result, and it was a way for blue states to snow the rest of us. You know, so that the rich people who lived in those states, the rich Democrats, didn't have to pay full freight on their tax bill because the states there had absurd tax structures. So Trump and company, they said, no more of that. $10,000 is the limit. Once you get past $10,000, you've got to pay your taxes. No more deducting your state and local taxes. And it's a great incentive for states to cut their taxes so that they don't hurt their own citizens. Stop spending so much, stop taxing so much. It's actually a great idea. Well, that expires at the end of next year. So one of the things that's missing in the conversation about how the Trump tax cuts are expiring next year is that if they do expire at the end of next year, what that means is that Biden's donors are getting a tax cut, a big one. And again, almost no one is talking about this aspect of it. So the taxes for the rest of us, they're going to go up. Our expenses are going to go up. But rich Democrats who live in blue states, they're going to get huge tax cuts. Isn't that amazing? The media has not spent much time on this subject. It's probably for a good reason. But again, we'll probably explore that with E.J. Antoni. Returning back to Trump's remarks here, he also talked about Biden's energy policies, which are anti-human, as we've been discussing at some length this hour.
That's a tax on the American people due to gross incompetence. And it was all started because of his energy policies, his stupid Green New Deal energy policies. And you wait till you see. If we don't win this nation is finished. You wait till you see what would happen, because all of that stuff will be closed up. He let a lot of my energy policies go through because energy was starting under what they were doing, starting to go up so high. So he let a lot of them continue, including the drilling, because the prices were going so high for gasoline and energy. And now he comes out and he actually says, I guess with a straight face, but I'm not sure he knows what he's saying anyway, that it was 9% under Trump. So at least the New York Post, and I hear the Wall Street Journal, and a couple of others did correct it. No, it was News. 1.4. It was actually lower than that. We included everything. They didn't include everything. They took some of the worst categories and didn't include them in the 9%. So his 9% is actually much higher than that.
His 9% is actually much higher than that. And I definitely believe that. The numbers have just been out of control, and you can see it everywhere, which is why people feel so crappy about this state of the economy right now. It's not the media, they keep going with this line. The White House certainly does, which is like, oh, it's actually great. That's what Biden said earlier this week in that interview. He's like, yeah, but wages are up. Not enough, dude. Not enough. They're not keeping up, which is why people hate your presidency. That's one of a bunch of really legitimate reasons. It's
Oh, Vince, as always, your show's amazing and fantastic. The Trump tax cuts, that gave me one of the first raises I had in a very, very, very long time. Not only that, but for all the listeners, it simplifies your taxes because the standard deduction went up so much. You didn't have to worry about trying to scrimp these itemized deductions. Yeah. All these people that have the $2 million, $5 million, $10 million homes that were just sucking us dry because they were screwing the average federal taxpayer. So, the standard deduction now is so high, it makes your taxes much easier. Yes. And I sure hope Trump gets in office because everybody, those people who $400,000, anyone below that's not going to have their taxes go up. Yeah, and Joe Biden took office, it was 9%. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know exactly right.
Liar.
So in case you're wondering if there's another good reason to vote for Trump this year, it's that your life is going to be a lot more affordable with him in office, a lot more affordable because Biden has already promised, Joel, to your point, that he's going to raise taxes on everybody next year. But what he's not admitting, which is something that I just said a moment ago, he's cutting taxes on his richest donors. Nobody's talking about this.
Reenacting the SALT, that's exactly what it does.
Yeah, big time.
People that are struggling, and I guarantee you, he'll take the standard deduction and he'll make it go way, way down, and people's taxes will go up.
Yeah, well, we're already feeling it with inflation, and that's the hidden taxes Trump keeps pointing out. That's exactly right. Hey, Joel, thank you for that. Good conversation on that. There's a lot of good reasons to vote for Trump this year. A lot of good reasons. Joel just laid out yet another one. It could be a very expensive mistake to vote for the other guy. A very expensive mistake for your family. Hey, I tell you what. Let's do this again Monday. The great one, Mark Levin, is up next here on WMAL. Please have an excellent weekend. If you missed any part of this program today or at any time, make sure to get the Vince Coglianese podcast. If you download it, my boss says, good job. And then I say, you're welcome. Have a great one.